"You don't belong in this building. Wait outside with the trash." That's what Marcus Thorne, the regional director of Vanguard Logistics, told the woman holding a tray of lukewarm coffee. He didn't look at her face. He didn't notice the Rolex hidden beneath her frayed sleeve. He only saw the uniform. He gave her an order, expecting her to cower. Instead, she checked her watch. It was 1:55 p.m. By 2 p.m., Marcus wouldn't just be regretting those words. He would be begging for his career, his reputation, and his freedom. This is the story of Nia Sterling, the black CEO who went undercover to find a thief, only to burn the whole house down. The rain in Seattle didn't just fall, it felt like it was trying to erase you. Nia Sterling pulled the collar of her oversized thrift store windbreaker tighter around her neck as she stepped off the public bus. A distinct smell of wet wool and diesel fumes clung to her, a scent she hadn't worn in 10 years. She looked down at her shoes, scuffed, non-slip black sneakers that had seen better days. They were a far cry from the Louboutin, currently sitting in a dust-proof bag in the back of her chauffeured Maybach, parked 3 blocks away around the corner. Today, she wasn't Nia Sterling, the 28-year-old founder of Sterling Dynamics, a logistics empire that had just made the cover of Forbes. Today, she was Sarah, a temp waitress from a staffing agency that didn't actually exist. She looked up at the glass monolith in front of her. Vanguard Towers. 2 weeks ago, her company had acquired Vanguard Logistics for a staggering sum. On paper, Vanguard was a gold mine. In reality, the numbers weren't adding up. Her CFO, David Chen, had flagged a discrepancy, $3 million in consulting fees hemorrhaging from the Seattle branch every quarter. When Nia asked for an audit, the regional manager, Marcus Thorne, had stalled. He blamed legacy software, clerical errors, and transition pains. Nia didn't believe in transition pains. She believed in rot, and rot had to be cut out. She pushed through the revolving doors, the warmth of the lobby hitting her instantly. The Vanguard lobby was an intimidating expanse of white marble and brushed steel. It smelled of money and lemon polish. Nia walked toward the front desk. Behind the high counter sat a woman who looked like she had been sculpted out of cynicism and expensive foundation. Her nameplate read, Jessica Vance. Jessica was currently typing furiously on her phone, her acrylic nails clicking like hail on a tin roof. "Excuse me," Nia said, pitching her voice slightly higher, adding a tremor of nervousness. Jessica didn't look up. "Deliveries are at the loading dock, around the back. Read the sign." "I'm not a delivery," Nia said, shifting her weight. "I'm Sarah, from Temp Solutions. I'm here for the board meeting catering. I was told to report to Mr. Thorne's office at 9 Sactor a.m. Jessica finally looked up. Her eyes swept over Nia, cataloguing every detail with forensic disdain. She saw the frizzy hair pulled back in a messy bun, the no-makeup look that highlighted the shadows under Nia's eyes, achieved with a little theatrical contouring, and the cheap polyester uniform. "You're late," Jessica snapped, though the clock on the wall read 8:58 a.m. "The bus was—" "I don't care about your bus," Jessica interrupted, rolling her eyes. She grabbed a plastic visitor badge and slid it across the marble surface, as if she were feeding a zoo animal she was afraid to touch. "Badge. Elevator bank, B. 40th floor. If you spill anything on the carpet, the cleaning fee comes out of your check, which, looking at you, would probably be your entire check." Nia took the badge. Her fingers brushed Jessica's hand, and the receptionist recoiled as if she'd been burned. "Thank you," Nia whispered. "Don't thank me." "Just don't be invisible," Jessica muttered, returning to her phone. Invisible. Nia walked toward the elevators, a small, cold smile playing on her lips. That was exactly the problem with people like Jessica Vance and Marcus Thorne. They thought people in service uniforms were invisible. They thought power was a suit, a tie, and a corner office. They didn't realize that the invisible people saw everything. Inside the elevator, Naya watched the numbers climb. 10, 20, 30. Her heart wasn't racing from fear. It was the adrenaline of the hunt. She reached into her pocket and touched the small device hidden there, a high-fidelity audio recorder. The doors pinged open on the 40th floor, the executive suite. Here the air was different. It was quieter, heavier. The carpet was thick enough to swallow footsteps. Nia adjusted her apron and walked toward the reception area of the boardroom. She could hear voices drifting from the open double doors of the main conference room. Worried about the audit, Marcus. Sterling is known for being a micromanager. Sterling is a child, a deep, booming voice replied. That was him, Marcus Thorne. She inherited a little tech startup and got lucky. She doesn't know the first thing about heavy logistics. She'll look at the spreadsheets, see the adjusted EBITDA, and smile for the shareholders. I have her eating out of the palm of my hand. Nia paused outside the door, her hand hovering over the recorder in her pocket. Inherited? She had built her company from a laptop in a library basement while working double shifts at a diner. This was going to be sweeter than she thought. Hey, you! Nia flinched, a genuine reaction this time, and turned around. A young man in a tailored suit, looking frantic, was rushing toward her. He held a silver tray piled high with porcelain cups and a thermal carafe. "You're the temp," he hissed, shoving the heavy tray into her arms. "Jesus, finally. I'm not an intern. I shouldn't be doing coffee runs. Take this inside. Put it on the side table. Do not speak to Mr. Thorne unless he speaks to you. And for God's sake, don't make eye contact. He's in a mood." "Okay," Nia said, gripping the heavy tray. "Go. Now." Nia took a breath. She wasn't the CEO right now. She was Sarah. She rounded the corner and stepped into the lion's den. The boardroom was an architectural marvel, featuring floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the grey, rain-swept city. A massive mahogany table dominated the room, seated around which were 6 men and 2 women. They were the regional management team of Vanguard. At the head of the table sat Marcus Thorne. He was a large man, taking up space not just physically, but atmospherically. He wore a navy bespoke suit that probably cost more than Sarah's imaginary annual salary. He was mid-laugh, leaning back in his leather chair, holding a crystal tumbler of sparkling water. "So I told the union rep," Marcus was saying, his voice booming. "If they want a bathroom break every 4 hours, they can work at McDonald's. This is logistics. The trucks don't stop to pee, so neither do we." The room erupted in sycophantic laughter. Nia felt a flash of white-hot anger in her chest. She had implemented mandatory break policies across all her companies years ago. To hear her own management team mocking basic labor rights was infuriating. She moved silently toward the side credenza, setting the heavy tray down with a soft clink. "Coffee is here," she said softly. The conversation didn't stop. No one acknowledged her. She was furniture. She began pouring cups, black for the man in the grey suit, cream for the woman with the red glasses. She moved around the table, placing the saucers down. As she worked, she listened. "What about the vendor account?" a man with a comb-over asked, lowering his voice. "The transfer is scheduled for Friday. If the Sterling audit team comes in next week..." "Relax, Peters." Marcus waved a hand dismissively. "The vendor account is labeled Consulting and Infrastructure. It's vague enough to be boring. Auditors look for red flags, not beige ones. Besides, I've got a buddy in Sterling's HR department. If anyone books a flight to Seattle, I'll know before they even pack their bags. Nia placed a cup of coffee in front of Marcus. Her hand trembled slightly. Intentional theatrics. A drop of coffee splashed over the rim and landed on the polished mahogany table. It was a tiny drop, no larger than a dime. The room went silent. Marcus stopped talking. He looked at the drop of coffee. Then, slowly, he looked up at Nia. He didn't look at her eyes. He looked at the name tag that was crookedly pinned to her chest. "You," Marcus said. His voice was dangerously quiet. "I'm so sorry, sir," Nia stammered, pulling a napkin from her apron. "I'll clean it right." "Don't touch it," he snapped. He stood up, towering over her. "You come in here, into a high-level strategy meeting, looking like that, and you can't even perform the simple task of pouring liquid into a cup." "It slipped. I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't unstain mahogany," Marcus sneered. He looked around the table, inviting his audience to join in the sport. "This is exactly what I was talking about, Peters. Standards. When you lower the barrier to entry, you get incompetence. You get filth." Nia gripped the napkin. "I can get a damp cloth." "I don't want a cloth. I want you out of my sight," Marcus barked. He checked his watch. "Actually, no. We are expecting a video conference with the new ownership in 20 minutes. I don't want the smell of wet dog lingering in here while I'm talking to the board." He pointed a thick finger toward the glass doors. "Wait outside." Nia blinked. "Sir?" "You heard me. Get out, but don't go back to the kitchen. I might need you to clean up more messes later if you're capable of learning. Just stand outside." "In the hallway?" Nia asked. Marcus laughed, a cruel, dry sound. "No, the hallway is for executives. The clients walk through there. I don't want them seeing you. Go out to the terrace." Nia looked at the glass door leading to the outdoor balcony. "Sir, it's raining. It's 40 degrees out there." "Then I guess you'll stay awake," Marcus smiled, his teeth white and predatory. "Consider it a performance review. If you're still standing when we're done, maybe I won't call your agency and have you blacklisted from every service job in the city." The other executives looked down at their papers, uncomfortable but unwilling to intervene. They were cowards. Every single one of them. Nia looked Marcus dead in the eye. For a split second, the Sarah mask slipped, and the CEO peeked through. Her gaze was steel. "You want me to wait in the rain?" she asked, her voice steady. Marcus stepped closer, invading her personal space. "I want you to know your place. Now! Move!" Nia held his gaze for 1 second longer than a waitress should have. She saw a flicker of confusion in his eyes, a lizard brain warning that he was making a mistake, but his arrogance squashed it instantly. "Yes, sir," Nia said. She turned and walked to the glass doors. She unlocked them, and a gust of wind and rain immediately blasted into the room, fluttering the papers on the table. "Close it! Hurry up!" Peters yelled. Nia stepped out onto the concrete balcony and pulled the heavy glass door shut behind her. The sound of the meeting was instantly replaced by the roar of the wind and the drumming of rain. Within seconds, her thin windbreaker was soaked. The cold bit into her skin. Her hair plastered to her forehead. Inside, through the glass, she saw Marcus laughing. He mimicked her trembling hand, recounting the story to his colleagues. He turned his back to the window, dismissing her entirely. Nia wiped the water from her eyes. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. It was waterproof. She didn't call the police. She didn't call her lawyer. She opened the Sterling Dynamics internal app. She navigated to the executive control panel, a feature only accessible by her and 2 other people on Earth. She watched Marcus inside the warm, dry room, taking a sip of the coffee she had poured. "Enjoy it, Marcus," she whispered to the glass. She checked the time. 1:55 p.m. At 2:00 p.m., the video conference with the new owner was scheduled to begin. Marcus thought he was going to be speaking to Nia Sterling via Zoom from her office in New York. He had prepared a slideshow. He had rehearsed his lies. Nia tapped a button on her phone. Initiate facility lockdown. Level 1. Silent. Inside the boardroom, the lights flickered once. The electronic locks on the main doors engaged with a sound that no one inside noticed over their own laughter. Nia stood in the rain, shivering, watching the countdown on her phone. 5 minutes. She wasn't just a waitress waiting in the rain. She was the storm. And she was about to make landfall. The cold was a physical weight. It didn't just touch the skin. It settled into the bones. Nia Sterling stood with her back pressed against the cold brick of the building's exterior, seeking a few inches of shelter from the overhang. But the wind was relentless. It whipped the rain sideways, soaking through the thin polyester of her Sarah uniform within seconds. Her hair, carefully pinned back to look like a harried temp worker, was now a heavy, sodden mess plastered to her skull. Water dripped from her nose. Her fingers, clutching her smartphone, were turning a pale, waxy shade of blue. But inside her chest, a furnace was burning. Through the floor-to-ceiling glass, the boardroom looked like a brightly lit aquarium. It was a scene of obscene comfort. The fireplace in the corner, gas-powered, fake logs, but real heat, cast a warm, golden glow against the polished mahogany. Nia wiped the rain from her eyelashes and watched. She saw Marcus Thorne pacing. He was no longer the angry tyrant who had banished her. He was now the coach. He was adjusting his cufflinks, checking his reflection in the darkened monitor of the massive teleconferencing screen on the wall. He ran a hand through his silvering hair, practicing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Nia unlocked her phone. Her thumb hovered over the Sterling Dynamics app. She tapped into the audio feed. In part 1, she had placed the audio recorder on the coffee tray. It was a tiny device, disguised as a black plastic coaster, currently sitting right under the carafe of coffee she had served. It was transmitting directly to her Bluetooth earbuds, which were hidden beneath her wet hair. The sound quality was crystal clear. It was as if she were standing right next to him. "Listen to me, all of you," Marcus's voice crackled in her ear, overlapping with the sound of the rain and the wind outside. "She's going to ask about the Q3 logistics reports. Peters, you do not, I repeat, do not mention the vendor switch." Peters, the nervous man with the comb over, was wringing his hands. "But Marcus, the numbers don't match. If she asks for the raw data—" "She won't ask for raw data," Marcus interrupted, his voice smooth and dismissive. "She's a headline chaser. She cares about diversity quotas and green energy initiatives. We'll dazzle her with the new electric fleet proposal. By the time she realizes the fleet doesn't exist yet, we'll have moved the money to the offshore accounts and covered the tracks with the consulting invoices." Nia's grip on her phone tightened. The fleet doesn't exist. She had approved a $12 million budget for that electric fleet 3 months ago. Marcus hadn't just stolen consulting fees. He had stolen the entire modernization budget. "What about the audit?" a woman in a grey suit asked. This was Linda, the head of HR. "If she sends a physical team—" "I told you," Marcus chuckled, leaning against the table, directly over the hidden microphone. "I own the building security. I own the scheduling software. If an auditor shows up, they get lost in paperwork for 6 weeks until they quit. We run this show. Sterling just pays for the tickets." He clapped his hands together. "All right, 2 minutes to show time. Everyone, sit up straight. Look productive. Smile like you love your job." Nia watched them scramble. Like roaches when the light turns on, they scurried to their assigned seats. They opened leather-bound notebooks. They uncapped expensive fountain pens. They arranged their faces into masks of professional competence. It was a masterclass in corporate theatre. Nia shivered violently, her teeth starting to chatter. The temperature was dropping. The wind howled around the corner of the skyscraper, a lonely, desolate sound that contrasted sharply with the muted luxury inside. She looked at Marcus one last time. He was checking his watch. He looked confident, untouchable. He was a man who believed the world was built for him, and everyone else was just raw material to be consumed. He didn't know that the raw material was watching him from 5 feet away, separated only by a sheet of glass and a locked door. Nia tapped her phone screen. Meeting ID 894-220-1199. Status: connecting. She didn't use the standard app. She used the admin override. This allowed her to enter the meeting without appearing on the participant list until she chose to reveal herself. Inside the room, the massive screen on the wall flickered to life. The Sterling Dynamics logo, a stylized silver hawk, spun elegantly in 4K resolution. The executives straightened their ties. Marcus buttoned his jacket. Nia leaned her head back against the wet brick wall and closed her eyes for a second. She remembered her father. He had been a janitor at a building, not unlike this one. She remembered the way he would come home, smelling of bleach and exhaustion, telling her stories about men in suits who walked through his wet, mopped floors without saying "excuse me." "They don't see us, Nia," he used to say, "but that's our superpower. We see them." "I see you, Marcus," she whispered into the rain. She tapped unmute. The digital clock on the boardroom wall clicked over to 2 p.m. Precisely on the second, the spinning hawk logo faded, replaced by a black screen. Marcus Thorne stood at the head of the table, his smile wide and practiced. He addressed the camera lens mounted on top of the TV. "Good afternoon, Ms. Sterling," Marcus boomed, his voice dripping with synthetic charm. "On behalf of the entire Vanguard Seattle team, welcome. We are incredibly excited to be part of the family." Silence. The screen remained black. No image, no sound. Marcus held the smile for 3 seconds, then 4. His eye twitched. He glanced sideways at Peters. "Is the connection down?" he hissed out of the side of his mouth. "It says connected," Peters whispered back, tapping frantically on his laptop. "Bandwidth is green." Marcus cleared his throat, louder this time. "Miss Sterling, are you there? We seem to be having a video feed issue on your end." Then a sound filled the room. It wasn't a voice. It was a noise, a low, rhythmic thrumming. Thwack, thwack, thwack. It sounded like wind or static. "Miss Sterling?" Marcus asked, his patience thinning. "I'm here, Marcus." The voice came through the surround sound speakers, crisp and commanding. It wasn't the warm, bubbly tone Marcus had expected from the interviews he'd watched on YouTube. It was cold, flat, dangerous. "Ah, there we go," Marcus laughed, relieved. "Technology, right? Always keeps us on our toes. We can hear you loud and clear, but we can't see you." "You don't need to see me yet," the voice said. "I'm currently observing." The executives exchanged confused glances. This was highly irregular. "Of course," Marcus said, recovering quickly. "Well, we have a comprehensive presentation prepared for you regarding the Q3 transition. We've exceeded our efficiency targets by 12% and—" "Stop!" The voice cut through him like a blade. Marcus froze. "I beg your pardon?" "I don't want to see slides, Marcus. I want to talk about culture. I want to talk about how Vanguard treats its people." Marcus relaxed. Culture. This was easy. This was HR fluff. He could spin this in his sleep. "I'm glad you asked, Nia. May I call you Nia?" He didn't wait for an answer. Our culture is our strongest asset. We operate like a family here. Respect, integrity, and mutual support. That's the Vanguard way. My door is always open, from the top executives down to the lowest level support staff. Everyone is valued. Outside on the balcony, Nia listened to the lie. She looked down at her stained apron. She looked at her trembling hands. "Everyone?" Nia asked. Her voice echoed in the boardroom. "That's interesting, because I was looking at your payroll, and I noticed a discrepancy in the temp agency contracts." Marcus stiffened. "Paperwork glitches, I assure you. We are currently auditing that ourselves." "I'm not talking about paperwork, Marcus. I'm talking about the human element. Tell me, how was your coffee this morning?" The question threw him off balance. "My coffee?" "Yes, the coffee sitting in front of you. Is it hot?" Marcus looked down at the cup. The drop of spilled coffee had dried on the table. "It's fine. A bit lukewarm, perhaps. Our catering service is usually top-notch, but we had a bit of an issue with a temp worker today. Actually, that's a perfect example of our standards. We demand excellence, even in the small things." "Ah," the voice said. "The temp worker. Sarah, wasn't it?" Marcus's eyes narrowed. How did she know the name? He hadn't mentioned it. Maybe the receptionist had logged a complaint. "Yes, I believe that was her name," Marcus said slowly. "Unfortunately, she was unpresentable, a hygiene issue, and clumsy. We had to remove her from the environment to protect the integrity of the workspace. We can't have unprofessionalism when we are dealing with high-level strategy." "Remove her," the voice repeated. "Where did you remove her to?" "Oh, just outside." Marcus waved his hand vaguely. "Sent her away." "Did you send her home?" "Essentially." "Marcus," the voice dropped an octave. It was no longer a question. It was a trap snapping shut. "Why do I hear wind in the background of your microphone?" Marcus blinked. I don't know. The insulation in this building is—" "I hear rain," the voice continued. "I hear the sound of a storm. It sounds very cold." "Ms. Sterling, I think we have a bad connection." Marcus reached for the mute button on the console. "Let me try to reconnect." "Don't touch that console," Nia commanded. The volume spiked, making everyone jump. "I want you to stand up, Marcus." "Excuse me?" "Stand up and walk to the window." The room went deathly silent. The other executives were frozen in their chairs. Peters looked like he was about to vomit. "Ms. Sterling, this is highly unusual," Marcus said, his voice tightening with anger. "I am a regional director, not a puppet. If you want to have a serious business meeting, turn on your camera and speak to me face to face. I am speaking to you face to face, Marcus. You just aren't looking." "What the hell does that mean?" Marcus snapped, his facade finally cracking. "Turn around." Marcus hesitated. He looked at the team. He looked at the black screen. Then, slowly, confused and irritated, he turned his chair around to face the floor-to-ceiling windows behind him. At first, he saw nothing but the grey wash of the storm and his own reflection in the glass. Then, a flash of lightning illuminated the terrace. There, standing alone in the deluge, was a figure. She was soaked to the bone. Her cheap windbreaker was clinging to her. Her hair was matted. She looked small against the backdrop of the raging sky, but she was holding a phone to her ear, and she was looking directly at him. Inside the boardroom, the speakers crackled. "Can you see me now, Marcus?" Marcus stood up. His legs felt weak. He took a step toward the glass, squinting. The waitress?" he whispered. On the balcony, Nia slowly lowered the phone from her ear. She tapped the screen one more time. "Video on." Inside the room, the giant black screen behind the table exploded into color. It showed a selfie view, a close-up of Nia Sterling's face. She wasn't in a New York office. The background of the video feed was the brick wall of the balcony they were looking at. Water was streaming down her face on the giant 80-inch 4K monitor. The waitress on the balcony raised her hand and waved. On the giant screen, the CEO waved back. The synchronization was perfect. Oh my God, Jessica, the receptionist who had come in to bring water, dropped a glass pitcher. It shattered on the floor. Marcus backed away from the window, as if the glass were radioactive. He looked from the small, shivering woman outside to the giant, imposing face on the screen. The realization hit him like a freight train. The dirty sneakers, the frayed cuffs, the temp agency that didn't exist. "Open the door!" Nia's voice boomed through the speakers, magnified, godlike. Marcus didn't move. He couldn't breathe. "I said," Nia yelled, her voice audible even through the thick glass now, "open the door!" The wind howled through the open door as Marcus Thorne finally managed to unlock it. His hands were shaking so violently that he fumbled the latch twice. When the glass finally slid back, the pressure change popped in the ears of everyone in the room. Nia Sterling stepped across the threshold. She didn't rush. She didn't run for warmth. She moved with a terrifying, deliberate slowness. Water pooled around her cheap, scuffed sneakers, instantly staining the pristine beige wool carpet dark grey. Her windbreaker dripped a steady rhythm onto the floor. Tap, 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 that seemed louder than the storm outside. The room was suffocatingly silent. The only sound was the hum of the server stack in the corner and the ragged breathing of the 8 people sitting around the mahogany table. Marcus stood by the door, holding it open like a doorman, his face drained of all color. He looked like a man who had just seen his own obituary printed in the morning paper. "Close it," Nia whispered. She didn't look at him. Marcus scrambled to slide the heavy door shut, sealing out the roar of the wind. The silence returned, heavier than before. Nia walked to the end of the table, the end opposite Marcus's empty chair. She stood there for a long moment, letting them look at her. Really look at her. 10 minutes ago, they saw a temp. They saw a nobody. They saw a nuisance to be discarded. Now, under the harsh fluorescent lights of the boardroom, the disguise began to dissolve, not through magic, but through presence. Nia reached up and pulled the chopstick out of her messy bun. Her hair, heavy with rain, fell in wet coils around her shoulders. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, smearing the water, but her eyes remained locked on the center of the table. She reached into her soaked pocket and pulled out the visitor badge. Sarah. Temp. She tossed it onto the mahogany table. It slid across the polished surface, spinning like a coin, before coming to rest directly in front of Peters, the CFO. "Sarah isn't here anymore," Nia said. Her voice was low, raspy from the cold, but it carried the weight of a gavel strike. "My name is Nia Sterling. I own this building. I own the chair you are sitting in. I own the coffee you are drinking. And as of 2 p.m. today, I own your debts." She began to walk around the perimeter of the table. Every head turned to follow her, terrified to look away, terrified to make eye contact. It was like watching a tiger circle a cage. She stopped behind Jessica, the receptionist who had sneered at her in the lobby. Jessica was trembling, her hands clutching her tablet so hard her knuckles were white. "You," Nia said softly. Jessica flinched. Miss Sterling, I didn't know. If I had known, if you had known I was rich, you would have treated me like a human being." Nia finished the sentence for her. "Is that the defense you want to go with, Jessica?" "No, I mean, It's just protocol. We get so many. Jessica's voice cracked. So many what? Nia leaned down, bringing her wet face inches from Jessica's perfectly made-up ear. So many people trying to earn a living? So many people who don't wear a Rolex? Nia straightened up. She didn't fire her. Not yet. She let the fear marinate. She continued walking. She reached the head of the table. Marcus's chair. It was a massive, high-backed leather throne. Nia looked at it. She looked at Marcus, who was still standing by the window, looking small and defeated. "Sit down, Marcus," she commanded. Marcus stumbled toward the nearest empty chair, a lowly side seat usually reserved for junior associates. He sank into it, his expensive suit crumpling. Nia sat in the head chair. She was wet, shivering, and looked like a drowned rat. But she filled that seat with more authority than Marcus ever had in 10 years. She placed her phone on the table. "Now," she said, looking at the terrified faces around her. "Let's finish the meeting. I believe we were discussing hygiene." "I'm cold," Nia stated flatly. Immediately, 3 executives jumped up. "I can adjust the thermostat," Peters yelped. "I'll get you a dry jacket," Linda from HR cried out, half rising. "Coffee! I'll get fresh coffee," the young intern shouted. "Sit down!" Nia slammed her hand on the table. The sharp crack made them all freeze. "I don't want your jackets. I don't want your coffee. I want you to feel uncomfortable. I want you to sit in this room and look at what you've done." She tapped her phone screen. The giant monitor on the wall changed. The video feed of her face disappeared, replaced by a complex spreadsheet. It was a live view of the Vanguard Logistics internal ledger, but not the one they showed shareholders. This was the shadow ledger. A collective gasp went around the room. "How?" Peters whispered, his eyes bulging. "That server is air-gapped. It's encrypted." "You really didn't do your research on me, did you?" Nia said, a dry smile touching her lips. "Before I built Sterling Dynamics, I was a cybersecurity analyst for the NSA. And Peters, your password was Vanguard 2023. My nephew has harder passwords on his iPad." She zoomed in on a column highlighted in red. Project, Zephyr, Fleet Modernization. Budget, $12,000. Status, completed. "Marcus," Nia said, turning her gaze to the former regional director. "Project Zephyr, the electric fleet. You told me in our initial emails that 50 electric semi-trucks were purchased and are currently operational in the mesmerizing distribution center." Marcus licked his lips. Sweat was beading on his forehead, despite the air conditioning. "Yes, they are in rotation, on the road. That's why you don't see them in the lot." 50 trucks, Nia repeated. "All on the road at the same time? In a storm?" "Logistics never stops," Marcus tried to quote his earlier line, but it sounded hollow and pathetic now. "Interesting," Nia said. "Because I was at the loading dock this morning. Before I came up here, I spoke to the yard manager, a nice man named Old Earl. Do you know Earl, Marcus?" Marcus said nothing. He didn't know Earl. He probably hadn't spoken to a yard manager in 5 years. "Earl told me something funny," Nia continued, leaning forward, her damp clothes squelching against the leather. "He said he hasn't seen a new truck in 4 years. He said the drivers are buying their own spare parts because the maintenance budget was cut to 0. She swiped the screen. A new document appeared, a bank transfer record. Beneficiary, MT Consulting Group, Cayman Islands. Amount, $11,500,000. Do you want to explain why the electric trucks are made of invisible money, sitting in a Cayman Island account registered to your wife's maiden name, Marcus? The room exploded into chaos. "I didn't know!" Linda screamed, turning on Marcus. "He told me it was a holding company for the vendor." "You signed the checks, Linda," Marcus roared back, his face turning purple. "Don't you dare pin this on me. You got your bonus. You took the trip to Bali on the company card." "That was a retreat," Linda shrieked. "Quiet," Naya said. She didn't shout. She just dropped the word into the middle of their fight like a stone into a pond. They fell silent instantly. "I don't care about the money," Naya said. "I can make $12 million in a week. That's just math." She stood up slowly. Her legs were stiff from the cold, but she walked around the table until she was standing directly behind Marcus. She placed her hands on the back of his chair. He flinched, terrified she was going to touch him. "What I care about," she whispered, "is the wait outside." She walked to the window, the same glass door she had been exiled behind. "You told me to wait outside because I looked poor, because I looked like I served you. And in your mind, anyone who serves you is less than human. They are trash to be kept out of sight, so they don't spoil your view." She turned back to face them. "My mother was a waitress," Nia said, her voice shaking with suppressed emotion. "She raised 3 kids on tips. She had bad ankles and arthritis, and she stood for 12 hours a day, serving coffee to men like you. Men who didn't look at her face. Men who dropped a dime on the table as a tip and thought they were generous." She looked at the coffee stain on the table, the one she had made earlier. "You fired Sarah because she spilled a drop of coffee. You wanted to destroy her livelihood over a dry cleaning bill." Nia walked back to the head of the table. She picked up the pitcher of ice water that had been placed there for Marcus. She looked at Marcus. "Stand up." Marcus stood up, his legs wobbling. "Miss Sterling, please. We can work this out. I can return the money. I have connections. I can—" Nia upended the pitcher. Ice water cascaded over Marcus's bespoke Italian suit. It soaked his silk tie. It ran down his expensive shirt. He gasped, spluttering, shock registering on his face. The room was frozen in horror. "It's just water, Marcus," Nia said, coldly. "It dries. But the stain on your reputation? That's permanent." She pulled a folded document from her back pocket. It was wet, limp, and soggy. She slapped it onto Marcus's wet chest. "This is a subpoena. My lawyers drafted it while I was standing on the balcony. You aren't just fired." She looked around the table at the rest of them. "None of you are just fired." She pointed to the door. "You are all under investigation for corporate embezzlement, fraud, and gross negligence. Security is waiting in the hallway. They have cardboard boxes. You have 5 minutes to pack your personal effects. If you touch a computer, you go to jail today instead of tomorrow." Marcus looked down at the soggy paper stuck to his chest. "You can't do this. The board." "I am the board," Nia roared, her voice finally breaking the sound barrier. She pointed to the glass door leading to the terrace. "Now get out. And Marcus." He looked up, broken, wet, and ruined. "Don't use the elevator. The elevator is for employees. You can take the stairs. Maybe by the time you walk down 40 flights, you'll remember what it feels like to work for a sweat." Nia turned her back on them and looked out at the storm. She heard the shuffling of feet, the sobbing of Linda, and the heavy thud of the main doors opening. "Get them out of here," she heard the head of security say from the hallway. When the door finally clicked shut, leaving her alone in the massive boardroom, Nia Sterling finally let her shoulders drop. She shivered, wrapping her arms around herself. She looked at the empty table. The coffee cup was still there. She picked it up, took a sip of the cold, black coffee, and smiled. It was the best cup of coffee she had ever tasted. The silence that followed the exodus of the executive team was heavy, but it wasn't empty. It was the kind of silence that comes after a fever breaks. A clean, exhausting clarity. Nia Sterling stood alone in the center of the boardroom. The storm outside had begun to soften, the raging downpour turning into a steady, rhythmic drizzle against the glass. She looked down at her hands. They were still shaking, not from cold anymore, but from the sheer release of adrenaline. The door to the boardroom creaked open. It wasn't security. It was a tall, impeccably dressed woman holding a garment bag and a pair of dry heels. It was Eleanor, Naya's personal assistant and right-hand woman, who had flown in on the private jet but had waited in the lobby until the signal was given. "I assume the meeting went well?" Eleanor asked, stepping over the puddle of water Naya had left on the carpet. I saw Marcus Thorne being escorted out by 3 security guards. He looked like he was crying. Nia exhaled a long breath she felt like she'd been holding for 2 hours. "He wasn't crying, Elena. He was melting. There's a difference." Elena unzipped the garment bag, revealing a sharp, cream-colored pantsuit. "Dry clothes. The car is downstairs. Do you want to leave? We can have the lawyers handle the rest." Nia looked at the dry suit. Then she looked at the door leading to the hallway. Beyond that hallway were elevators, and below those elevators were 20 floors of offices, and below that, a massive warehouse filled with 300 people who currently had no leadership. "No," Nia said, taking the towel Elena offered and drying her hair. "I'm not leaving. We're just getting started. You want to address the staff? I want to address everyone. The warehouse, the drivers, the janitors. Call a town hall. Now, in the loading bay." 10 minutes later, Naya Sterling stepped out of the executive bathroom. She had washed the Sarah makeup off her face. Her hair was brushed back into a sleek, commanding ponytail. She wore the cream suit that fit her like armor. She walked out into the hallway. Standing there, clutching a tray of empty mugs, was the young man from earlier, the one who had shoved the coffee tray at her and told her not to make eye contact. His name tag read Elio. When he saw Nia, he froze. He looked at the suit. He looked at her face. The recognition hit him like a physical blow. The tray rattled in his hands. "Oh God," Leo whispered, his face draining of blood. You're her. You're the owner." He backed up until he hit the wall. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Please don't fire me. I need this job. My mum is sick, and the insurance." Nia stopped. She looked at this terrified young man, a mirror of who she used to be. "Leo," she said softly. He flinched. "I'm packing my things right now." "Put the tray down, Leo." He placed the tray on a filing cabinet with trembling hands. "You told me to hurry up with the coffee because you were afraid of Marcus," Nia said, stepping closer. "You told me not to make eye contact because you knew he would humiliate anyone who drew his attention. You weren't being rude to me. You were trying to protect me." Leo blinked, confusion warring with fear. I just didn't want him to yell at you." Nia smiled. It was a genuine, warm smile. "You saw the danger, and you warned me. That's not a fireable offense. That's management potential." Leo's jaw dropped. "What?" "I fired the management team, Leo. All of them. The executive assistant position is open. It pays double what you're making now, and you won't have to carry coffee unless you want a cup for yourself. Do you want it?" Leo stared at her, tears welling in his eyes. He couldn't speak. He just nodded frantically. "Good," Nia said, turning to walk toward the elevators. "Come with me. We have a company to fix." The warehouse floor. The loading bay of Vanguard Logistics was a cavernous space smelling of diesel, cardboard, and sweat. Usually, it was a roar of activity. Today it was silent. 300 workers stood in a semicircle, forklift drivers, packers, dispatchers, and mechanics. They wore neon vests stained with grease. They looked tired, and they looked worried. Rumors had spread that the suits upstairs had been cleared out. In their experience, when the bosses got fired, the workers got laid off. Nia Sterling walked onto the raised platform that overlooked the floor. She didn't use a microphone. She didn't need one. The acoustics of the concrete bay carried her voice. "My name is Nia Sterling," she began. She looked out at the sea of faces. She saw the same look in their eyes that her father used to have, the look of people who are used to being invisible. "Some of you might know that my company acquired Vanguard 2 weeks ago. Some of you might be wondering if you still have jobs today." A low murmur went through the crowd. "I just fired your regional director, Marcus Thorne," Nia announced. The murmur grew louder. Someone in the back whistled. "I fired him," Nia continued, her voice rising, "because he forgot who runs this company. He thought the company was the boardroom. He thought the company was the mahogany table and the view from the 40th floor." She walked to the edge of the platform and pointed down at a man standing near a forklift. It was Earl, the older yard manager she had spoken to that morning before entering the lobby. "Earl," she called out. The older man jumped, taking off his cap. "Yes, ma'am?" "This morning, you told me that the number 4 bay door has been broken for 6 months, and it slows down loading by 20 minutes per truck. Is that right?" "Yes, ma'am," Earl said, his voice echoing. "I put in a request, but Mr. Thorne said there wasn't any budget." "There is budget now," Nia said firmly. "Earl, as of this moment, you are the new director of facility operations. You report directly to me, fix the door, and while you're at it, give everyone on this floor a 15% raise, effective immediately." The silence shattered. It wasn't polite applause. It was a roar. It was the sound of 300 people realizing they had just been seen for the first time in years. Nia raised her hand, and the crowd quieted down, hanging on her every word. "Marcus Thorne told me to wait outside," she said, her voice trembling with the memory. "He told me that because I wore a uniform, I didn't belong in the room where decisions are made. He was wrong." She scanned the crowd, meeting the eyes of the women in packing, the men in dispatch, the young kids working their first shifts. From now on at Sterling Dynamics, there is no outside. If you work here, you are inside. If you have an idea, I want to hear it. If you see something wrong, I want you to speak up. We don't hide the truth to protect the egos of men in suits. We build together." She took a deep breath. "Now," she smiled, "get back to work. We have a lot of trucks to move." The aftermath. 6 months later. The rain in Seattle was still relentless, but inside Vanguard Towers the atmosphere was unrecognizable. The executive suite on the 40th floor had been gutted. The mahogany table was gone. The walls had been knocked down to create an open-plan workspace. Leo, looking sharp in a fitted blazer, walked over to Nia's desk. He wasn't carrying coffee, he was carrying a tablet with the Q4 projections. "Nia," he said, "the audit on the Cayman accounts is finished. The lawyers recovered 80% of the stolen funds from Marcus's assets. His boat, his house, and his cars are being auctioned off next week." "Good," Nia said, not looking up from her screen. "Put it all into the employee pension fund." "Already done," Leo grinned. "Oh, and we got a letter from the prison. Marcus wants to know if you'll accept a collect call. He says he has vital information about the industry." Nia finally looked up. She turned her chair to face the window, the same window she had once stood behind in the freezing rain. She looked at the city below. She thought about the power of perspective. Marcus had looked down from this tower and seen ants. She looked down and saw the foundation. "Tell him," Nia said, a small, satisfied smile playing on her lips, "that I'm currently in a meeting, and if he wants to talk, She paused, savoring the words. He can wait outside. The fall of Marcus Thorne wasn't just a corporate shake-up. It was a reckoning. It was a reminder that the most dangerous person in the room isn't always the one shouting the loudest or wearing the most expensive suit. Sometimes it's the person standing quietly in the corner, observing everything. Nia Sterling proved that true leadership isn't about exclusion. It's about recognition. She didn't just fire a corrupt management team. She dismantled a culture of invisibility. She showed us that when you treat people like trash, eventually you get taken out with it. But when you empower the people who actually build your business, you don't just create a company, you create a legacy. So the next time you see someone in a service uniform, someone cleaning a table, or someone waiting in a lobby, remember Nia Sterling. Remember that you never truly know who you are talking to. And remember that the walls we build to keep others out are often the same walls that trap us in. What would you have done if you were in Nia's shoes? Would you have revealed yourself sooner, or would you have let Marcus dig his own grave just like she did? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of undercover justice and corporate karma, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story. We release new dramas every Tuesday and Friday. Thanks for watching, and remember, be kind to everyone, because you never know who's really the boss.